Stable and airport information, Mike. Wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature 5.
Strip's where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.
Hey, and welcome to the Wager Zone. We're about to get into some real college football this week. It kicks off. We're a week away from the NFL. Soccer is in full swing. Not necessarily in our favor last week. Some tough losses for me. Some
really bad.
No wins for you, basically. But nonetheless, we're getting into the season here. We're about a week away from everything fully going on. Let's kick off soccer. We'll finish up on our college football previews and then start to round out our NFL previews. We'll also have a separate show where we'll have our college football futures that'll drop after this. We both got a pretty big list of college football futures. I know that's a thing I always love. I just love futures. If you can handle the holding of your funds for a long period of time, it's always my favorite thing to do, is sort of predict how the season will go and then watch it play out and go on week to week. But let's kick things off in the Premier League. Friday, there wasn't much. I mean, if Chelsea scores 3 goals, I guess you got to celebrate a little bit. But it was versus Luton Town, so I don't think we'll break down that much other than probably needed, I'd say, for Chelsea. But let's get into a couple of the games Saturday, a couple that really sort of cost you money here. We'll kick it off with Arsenal and Fulham. This is, week 3 now that Arsenal has not looked very good, and this I thought was probably the worst I thought they'd looked all year long. They sort of got away with it for the first 2 weeks, but they were down early in here. Had to sort of find a cheapy penalty goal there where Xhaka converted, and Nikita got one real late. But then once again, Fulham got that header right towards the end of the match where Arsenal once again wasn't defending. What do you make of this Arsenal team right now, and how? I mean, I think they've probably been your number one team that had cost you money so far this year. How do you sort of adjust your wagering on them right now?
Yeah, I'm staying away from right now just because they're trying to screw around and just assume they're going to win these games, which they managed to do in the first 2 weeks. But, I mean, Fulham's not amazing. But they just really struggled to score. Had a lot of possession there, but, couldn't get much across. Got a, questionable, penalty and then, got a couple across, but still wasn't enough to take care of Fulham. Got the draw, which for them, they're feeling a loss on that, especially being at home.
I think the home drawing at home, though, it felt like a loss, is really where I thought this would be the game where, 2 games to sort of warm yourself up. Home game, Fulham, who hasn't looked great, and I thought they'd kick off and, pull one of these 3-1s that they were doing last year. And they haven't been able to find the rhythm. They did get the 2 goals, which did get your over 2.5. But, it was a struggle.
Yeah, well, I had the over 1.5 Arsenal. They got that one late, and then I parlayed that with another game that didn't turn out so well. So
Gabby Jesus came on late in that game.
Is he going to be ready to go full go?
I don't know if he'll be ready to go full go, nor will I don't know if they'd want to take that chance. I mean, we'll get to the Real Madrid situation with Vinicius a little bit later, throwing hamstring guys out there with tape on and expecting it to be okay. But do you feel maybe Jesus comes back, this gets a little better? Because I don't know if their problems are really up front. This weird concoction where Partey's playing, right back, and, I don't want to pile on Kai Havertz because everybody else is, but the things that are different from last year's team seem to be what is causing this team not to flow as well.
Yeah, it's just they can't get into a rhythm, and they definitely don't look like a team that's going to be able to get a top 4 finish.
Yeah. Next, we're going to break down the Everton-Wolverhampton Wonders. Did anyone actually pay attention to this game? There was a goal. I will say that.
I did tell you before the game we didn't make it in our plays, but the under 1.5 was, I think it was like 2-1.
Yeah,
and we knew there wasn't going to be more than a goal here, and we should have played that.
I very much wanted to play a very, very heavy 0-0, and I almost got it.
They barely got the one there at the end.
But no, we will not break down that game too much. Manchester United, Nottingham Forest, which was actually a really, really good game. Forest got 2 goals really, really quick. One, a weird little bounce there where it basically Bali was just standing around the goal and it basically just hits him and goes in. Not much you can do about
Another one, the keeper just jumps out of the way.
Not much you can do about that, but I mean, they were threatening early, but once again, I think, though United, I thought, started to play better in the second half, it seems like officiating, once again, somehow lends itself to going Manchester United way. Got, I guess, a red card. You could make an argument for it, but it seemed pretty soft, and that penalty on Marcus Rashford, I'm not sure there was even any contact, and if there was, it was of the slightest brushing. But Manchester United, once again, just like Arsenal, continues to, I just say, not look great and look vulnerable. They have 6 points out of possible 9, so I don't know how much you could complain. But certainly, if a couple officiating things went different, we're probably talking 2 points out of a possible 9.
Yeah,
here.
definitely. I think if I don't know, that red card was weird, and then the penalty was just terrible. I thought. I think at best, this should have been a draw.
Yeah.
Them being able to get a win was definitely some help with the officiating, and which, they got that in the last one, which probably should have been a draw. So, like you said, they're on the same page as Arsenal. I think underperforming, not exceeding or not meeting expectations, or maybe if you'd had these expectations of these teams, but I thought we were going to see a little bit of a turnaround for United a little bit this year, but they kind of look like the same old United.
Yeah, and what concerned me now, granted, putting Martial up front was not the answer. I think I sent you a text because I was up in the mountains so I get a lot of reception. I was like, where's Rashford playing? And you're like, on the wing. I was like, who's up front? You put Martial. I go, oh, okay. And I was like, this is going to be a struggle. They did find some off. The Christian Eriksen goal was beautifully worked. And, I will say they got the Casemiro goal, found it, but that penalty really, really, I thought was soft. Like I said, you could probably argue the red card. I could listen. I wouldn't validate it, but you could at least make a case for it. But that penalty, I don't think you can make a case for at all. But nonetheless, United now 6 points. So, I mean, they're getting their points, but it doesn't look pretty. I think the play there on gambling on them, if they go up just like they did a week ago versus Tottenham, they go up against one of the big boys, which they do this week. And the other struggler in Arsenal, I might be a little aggressive on Arsenal here. If we can get some 60 minutes out of Gabby Jesus, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm feeling Arsenal might rotate the lineup a little bit. Move Kai Havertz to the bench, move Partey back into the midfield, sort of balance things out. Before we get off Saturday, probably the most entertaining game was Brighton and West Ham.
This is the one that cost me a lot of money right here.
I think this one really hurt you because it was just classic West Ham where Basically, they sit back and have Brighton hammering on their box the whole game, and 3 quick counters, bam, 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 and they're the ones who win 3-1.
I think West Ham had something like 18-20% possession in this game.
Yeah, certainly those last 20 minutes, I don't even think they touched the ball. But when Mikel Antonio's just bullying those guys on the Brighton back line, and they can hit that counter. West Ham, it could be like it was 2 or 3 years ago, where they were battling for top 4 but ended up finishing top 6. I thought they've got off to a really, really good start this year.
But they're right up there behind City now.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye. I don't know if I want to be aggressive, because they will be in Europe again, and that seemed to be a little bit of their downfall, because they don't quite have the depth. But nonetheless, they get in there. We'll touch on Villa after that disastrous Newcastle, because it probably leads into our next. But Villa, once again, just put it on Burnley. 3 goals for Villa. This is second game in a row where they've had 3 and 4 goals. Mm-hmm. Villa looking good, at least right now, including a midweek win where they got 5 and a hat trick from Watkins. So Villa seems to be over. That first game where they sort of dropped off at the 60.
Yeah.
Transition into
2 straight wins.
The Newcastle United Liverpool. We were pretty pumped up after that opening week, because we thought that win versus Villa was going to sort of lead something, and I don't know what it's led to, but it's led to 2 just. Once again, they didn't try to go after the win.
Yeah.
I mean, they got up 1-0. They probably should have had a red card from Trent Alexander-Arnold early. I get that, but, they didn't get it. They did get the red card from Van Dijk, basically playing from, 25 minutes on.
Yeah.
A man up, get that goal from Gordon, which was a beautifully, worked goal, perfect shot. Little unlucky on the Almiron and save that Allison made, which was a ridiculous save. But that second half, they seemed content with winning the game 1-0.
Yeah.
It just 2 weeks in a row, we haven't seen Newcastle play with that same sort of intensity to really put these teams away. And it cost them here.
I think this could be a really huge momentum swing for Liverpool too. They were kind of sitting in the same boat as United and Arsenal, and I think this could be the game that separates them, gets them a little bit of momentum, and they move forward and maybe get on a run here.
Yeah, really impressive with Liverpool. Basically, they defended the last 70 minutes of the game like I hadn't ever seen them defend, and then
just picked the right time and then solid counters.
Yeah, and then just a perfect move by Klopp. Once that game was 1-0 with about 10 minutes left, put in Nunez, opened up the offense a little bit, see if he could, snake 1 goal. I don't think he was going in there thinking he was going to get a win. And a little fortuitous of a bounce, but Nunez was behind him. So once that ball, bounced off of him and went forward, Nunez was all alone on goal, and then basically just a replay of it on the second goal. Nunez once again gets right behind and puts in just a perfect ball. I missed the first part of this game. I ended up rewatching the full game later. I started thinking a little bit about Newcastle here. It's probably a little early to get on coaches a little in trouble. But you have essentially, we talked about it last, you have 2 games versus 2 teams you think are going to be contenders, certainly for the Premier League, definitely for the top 4, and 2 games where you're sort of in the position to take advantage of a situation. We mentioned Manchester City playing their 4th game in 2 weeks, coming off a midweek game, in the Middle East. They didn't play real aggressive there. Week later, same sort of thing, didn't play real aggressive there. I'm curious how long, the Saudis will be patient, because they might be a little bit of a victim of their own success. I don't think last year they thought they were going to be sort of a an easy top 4 team.
Yeah.
You go into this year, you sort
Expect
of
it.
pencil in top 4 and maybe contender. You have that first week where you go, oh, we're right there. We just beat Aston Villa 5-1, and Villa's now won 4-1 and 3-1 in the next 2 games. And I wonder if they see that play from the last 2 weeks and are like, Eddie Howe's a good coach. He can get us organized. He can get us things. But we need a Pep, or we need a Jurgen Klopp who can put us into championship gear. Do you think the Saudis would be sort of rash like that, or you think they've been patient adding guys? They haven't gone out and just, thrown money everywhere, Chelsea style, which they could easily do. But it just made me curious. I'm like, do they see this and say, this is Eddie Howe's limit? He can't beat the elite teams with the elite coaches.
Well, I know I'm, still relatively new, just a few years into soccer. But
it's been a fun 2 years you've come in. I think every coach but 4 got fired.
My experience with the coaching, hiring, and firing is it's a short leash on everybody. So I tend to lean if Newcastle doesn't, start moving their way towards the top half of the table here soon. Because right now they're just a short jump away from the bottom of the table. So I think they need to turn things around quick.
It crossed my head, and then I was like, I wonder what I could get for first coach fired Eddie Howe. I don't think it'll happen because in hindsight, lose to Liverpool, lose to Man City. You aren't exactly like our coach is terrible. What is he going to do? But it just was sort of the way they played. Same thing, not aggressive. It wasn't Newcastle style that we had seen for all of last year and the first game this week. Let's move to La Liga. I didn't think a ton happened. The most interesting thing was Real Madrid. Hits keep coming here. This one I thought was a little of their own doing. If you watch the game, Vinny Jr. about, 10, 15 minutes.
I think it was around 20.
He pulled up lane. Yeah. They pulled him to the side, put some athletic tape on it, gave the coach the thumbs up, went back in, put a long ball over. Vinny went running, and Vinny went pop on the hammy, and then we get the interview afterwards that everything's going to be okay. We expect him to be back. 2 days later, it's now a 4 to 6 weeks type thing. So I'm just hits are coming here on Real Madrid.
Yep.
We're now no Benzema, no Vinny, no Courtois, and no Militao. At what point do we start to worry about Real Madrid?
Well, they're still managing to get wins.
Yes, I will say that. They're 3-0. They found a gold. Jude Bellingham apparently is going to score 65 goals on this season from his midfield position. But I'm getting a little worried here that it hasn't been pretty for Real Madrid. Now, it hasn't really been pretty for the last 3 years. But like you said, they found a way to win. But I'm very curious now how it looks without Vinny, because Vinny is what attracts all the attention.
Well, they got 1 week and then international break, so that's a freebie there. If they can limp through and maybe not drop anything major, they might be able to survive until some of these guys can get back. But it's kind of been that way all season. They've just been limping through, getting by, getting their wins, and taking care of business. So.
I'm a little nervous this sort of hangs around. I wouldn't worry if it was somebody like Modric who could sort of...
I think they've got a pretty favorable matchup this week as well. So.
Yes, it just happened that I don't know how, but Real hasn't played really any of they basically played the lower tier of the Spanish league. Now, granted, Celta Vigo had started out undefeated, but I don't think any of us are wagering on Celta Vigo to be in the top 6 or probably even the top 8 when this all ends. Just be interesting to see how Vinny reacts to a muscle injury as well. Him being so reliant on his speed.
Yeah.
But it's concerning. Barcelona Villarreal. I was a little off on this game. I took the under 2.5, and I think we had 4 goals in about 30 minutes here. So this one I was a little off on, but it it was interesting. The only thing I gathered from this game is it felt like we talked about it a little last week that Barcelona fans don't really like the slow down.
Yeah.
We aren't going to play offense type thing. Granted, it got them a lot of wins in La Liga. It seemed like they tried to open up a little bit here, and they were getting torched on the back end of that defense. They got the win, but do you like this way better for Barcelona? Because I'm not sure this is going to lead to more wins.
Well, I mean, you have to get a lot of goals if you're going to play this way, and
this hasn't been a team who's done that.
Luckily, Lewandowski finally got his first goal of the season, so maybe he can turn things around. And if he starts scoring a little bit more consistently, like they hope, maybe it'll work out okay. But if you're going to play defense like that, you don't want to count on 4 goals every week. This
looked like Barcelona from about 2 years ago, where I could always take the both to score and then take Barcelona win both to score every week. I'm curious what we get. This week, I will say the Lamal, 16-year-old, it's impressive what he's doing. I don't know how long it can last. I certainly don't know if they get in to Champions League, if they can throw the 16-year-old out on the wing. That feels like he'll get bullied a little bit more than he will in La Liga. But I will say Atletico Madrid scored 7 goals on Monday. I asked you, was there any chance he should have taken Atletico Madrid over 6.5? Yeah. Needless to say, they probably have looked the best. They've had 2 really good games in La Liga. One putrid game, but I think everybody saw that coming. But it's interesting because Barcelona, I don't quite know how to handicap them right now, because I watched them play that terrible games for the 2 weeks where they defend. Then I watched them try to open up. They get some goals, but they look so open that I'm like, oh, this isn't good either. So I don't know what to make of Barcelona right now. So it might be a little bit of a wait and see. Bundesliga, I don't think we even had a ton of vets in the Bundesliga this week. It just, I think every matchup was sort of lopsided, and there wasn't a lot to get a couple odds. Good win for you with Union Berlin.
Yeah.
I will say they got that red card and were down, and then scored a bunch of goals. Granted, it helps to have the team that was in Bundesliga too that you're playing. I don't know if they could pull that same thing. Munich, pretty easy win versus Augsburg. Didn't have to play that hard. Leverkusen continues to play well. Nice win at Gladbach. Same for Leipzig. Good win on Friday. Dortmund would probably be the one to talk about here. It's been 2, I'd say, poor performances. Once again, they had to be bailed out with a goal in about the 60th minute. Bochum, who got beat, I believe, 5-0 the week before, and were a 1-1 winner. I know they tried to spin it where Bochum's a tough place to go, but, from what I'm seeing in the Bundesliga right now, with the way Berlin's playing, the way Leverkusen's playing, the way Leipzig's playing, Munich, ... they're always good. Wolfsburg's even started out the season pretty solid. I'm not hitting panic yet because Dortmund started slow last year, but it's a little weird that they've been so bad versus 2 teams who definitely will be towards the bottom in Cologne and Bochum to start your season.
Well, you listed 5 or 6 teams there that are going to be tough, and they need to be getting these points against these bad teams, and so not a great start.
Yeah, definitely not for Dortmund here. Interesting to see how they sort of spin it along. Italy, my Juventus feel lasted 1 week. I will say.
Well, you felt so good about him. You got me on board.
Yes, and
then I lost.
And then they look like Juventus has looked the last 2 or 3 years. I will say, AC Milan looking good.
That's my team right there. I've picked them 2 weeks in a row.
Napoli, I thought they'd have a little bit of drop off, but these first 2 weeks. They
nothing flashy, just taking care of business.
They get their goals and put the teams away. So right now, Napoli, AC Milan look pretty good. Inter's won their games. I wouldn't call them looking amazing. Roma has looked bad. I was all hyped about Juventus, and I got thrown some cold water. But nonetheless, it was a interesting week in Italy. France, PSG finally came to life. Mbappe got 2 goals, one late. Marseille won at home, like you expect them to do. Actually, that Monaco game on Friday was probably the most entertaining thing versus Nantes that went on. So,
well, if you can pick the right game to get the overs on, there's
definitely
usually at least one in the French league that you're going to get 6 or 7 goals.
So, PSG back on track here. The Frankfurt Koulibaly sort of made it known he'd like to go there. If he ends up there, you got now Mbappe, Koulibaly, Dembele. Is it worth going after? Did you see enough from Monaco to sort of make a run at it? I could probably throw Marseille in there, but I don't think either of us trust Marseille all that much. I'll throw Monaco because I think that's about the only one who theoretically could challenge.
Yeah, I was a little bigger on them. I thought it was a tough outing this past Friday. I don't know if the short week got them, but a road match. But I think PSG is going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah,
Mbappe is going to go on a scoring run. He's going to start getting them left and right.
Yeah, I cooled off after a little bit. I don't think.
Now that they've kind of settled their things out.
They've settled their things, and if they end up with Koulibaly, Dembele, Mbappe, there's just not enough talent. Monaco, fun to watch, but, I think we saw their defensive frailties a little bit. Entertaining, I will say. We probably should have gotten that 4th or 5th goal from them to win that game, but nonetheless, interesting week in soccer. Some good matchups this week. I thought last week there weren't a ton of great matchups. That Newcastle-Liverpool was one of the good ones.
Yeah.
It ended up sort of not being great because of the red card. There have been a handful of those games, especially in the Premier League, where they've been dishing out red cards. I feel like a little too much to try to get control, and it ruins the game a little bit because then you got to switch everything around and how you play. But better matchups this week, I think. Yeah. Definitely.
I'm looking forward to that Arsenal-Man U game.
I'm really excited to see who sort of comes out of that because I'm interested to more hear what the teams who lost in that one, how their fans are sort of feeling. All right, let's finish up our college football preview. We're going to go SEC, Big Ten, and ACC. Basically, the only 3 conferences that are going to be left. Let's kick things off with the aforementioned Alabama. It was a bad year for them. Everybody has now crossed them off.
Last I checked, Nick Saban is still their coach.
Yes, they still have a ton of people who will be playing in the NFL. They were 11-2. Once again, last year, I don't, you know how I get when I hear, they're falling behind. I mean, they just as easily could have been 13-0 as well. It wasn't like, and they could have lost more. It's just football. Sometimes the ball bounces your way. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. That's usually how your season is determined. And for teams like Alabama and others, it sort of determines if you win a national championship or not. Georgia could have very easily have lost. And now everybody is talking about a three-peat. So anyway, what do you make of Alabama this year? It's going to be a good team. I know they lost their quarterback, but I'm assuming they will be fine.
Well, they've got a couple guys to choose from here, but it's not what we're used to with Bama. They've been rolling in kind of the expected, top 10 NFL draft pick every year, quarterback. They're rolling out a couple of unknowns. They've got, Milroe that's been there. They got the transfer from Notre Dame in. So, if Saban doesn't like who he rolls out there early, which I'm sure we'll find out in week 2 in that Texas matchup, who their guy's going to be.
He's been pretty definitive, too. He hasn't been one of those who's done a ton of rotation. He sort of That first game, he might see his guys, and then he sort of picks
Yeah.
it, and that's who he goes with.
Yeah, so we'll see. I have a little bit of questions on them offensively, and just they haven't been able to. I mean, they're still pretty dominant recruiting, but Georgia's kind of taken away a little bit of that. They're not quite at the dominance they were, but I think you still at worst going to see a 9-10 win team.
That's what I was going to say. The bad is like 9 wins. It's going to hover probably between 9, 10, 11 wins. Like I said, depending on how the ball bounces.
I think they've got a lot of tough games at home this year.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
It sort of flips from last year where a lot of their tough games were on the road. It flips this year to where a lot of their tough games are at home. Granted, the Auburn, is on the road. It's a rivalry. That's what I'll say. I don't know if we regard that as a tough game. A&M's on the road.
Yeah.
I'm not going to quite go there. It's tough.
Well, it's been 2 years in a row. I think we've jumped on A&M.
Yes.
And
I will wait and see how the we'll get to it. The
Yeah.
Bobby Petrino experiment goes, but nonetheless, we'll see how they go. Should be a very good football team once again. Brian Kelly came into LSU.
yeah.
I don't want to say got things right because LSU's always sort of hovering its sense into a massive talent pool where even if they have a bad year or two, they can get good pretty quick. I thought they played really, really good the last month of the season.
They got their offense rolling a little bit there at the end of the year.
Once they sort of figured out their offense, they looked better and better. Now, we're getting national championship, talk.
Yeah, I'd pump the brakes on that a little bit.
I'm not quite as aggressive on that. I think it'll be similar to the year they had last year. I don't know if they'll get off to the sort of slow start, but I think they'll find spots where they sort of lose games here and there.
Yeah, I don't see them making it through the SEC, unscathed, and I really see maybe a couple losses on this SEC schedule, or maybe just one on the SEC, and then maybe they drop that opener against Florida State. I think that's a toss-up in that one, but I'm not as big on LSU, and a lot of the national media, they really like Jaden Daniels, and I guess he's been okay, but I haven't seen anything Heisman worthy from him yet. But he's getting
entertaining.
He's getting a lot of hype. He's been in college for 10 years now.
That's correct.
He's got experience.
That's correct as well.
But I think we might see about the same we saw last year from LSU. They might not start as slow, so maybe they can manage one more win. But I'm not seeing a 10-11 win team here.
I think when you bring Brian Kelly in, you just get the consistency that you didn't from like Ed. You have the magical run where you have a team loaded with NFL guys, but you also have downs where you can't win any football games. Brian Kelly, you're going to win 9, 10, 11 games.
I don't think his ceiling is as high.
No.
But his floor is higher.
That's correct. But I think if you had given Brian Kelly that team that won the national championship.
I'm pretty sure I could have coached that team to a national championship.
He would have been okay. So I think similar. Once a lot of their tough games are also at home, so I look for that to help them out a little bit. But I think there's a chance here, especially with the way Jaden Daniels is sort of hot and cold. If he's cold, I think LSU is vulnerable to be beat. Now we'll go to basically the swing team.
I mean, this is really how this team comes out. Is going to affect where LSU finishes, where Bama finishes.
I have no read, would be my thing. They have talent, but we hear they have talent every year.
Yeah.
Last year they had so much talent, they went 5-7. So
I just can't believe it's already Jimbo's 6th year at A&M. It feels like he just got here a year or two ago, and
he has a lifetime deal, so we might be doing this podcast.
Well, each year they get his buyout gets a little cheaper, and it gets a little bit more tempting to fire him. I think if he repeats what he did last year, he might be able to scrounge up enough
slide
money.
Petrino in there? Then?
Yeah, that's a match made in heaven, isn't it?
I want to see that.
When I saw that Petrino hire, I was like, we'll see how that works out. I mean, they need something on offense to get them a spark, but
Well,
they also need some stability on this
Yes.
team, and I don't know if Petrino's the
Well,
guy
that's
you
where
reach
I
out
was-
for
you know-
stability.
if you look at Bobby Petrino, he was very good the first time at Louisville, and made his way and got that Atlanta Falcons job. Screwed them over when he figured out he couldn't coach professional football. Went to Arkansas. I always thought that was a little bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
They did the fun thing where we played Alabama close, but we lost, which, it was always 8-9 wins. It was never a true contender. He got fired from there, went back to Louisville, and I didn't think he did a good job at all that second time around Louisville. And I think he's a little bit overrated for what he is. Granted, you couldn't get any worse than what their offense was last year.
Yeah.
So I assume the passing game will be better.
Well, they towards the end of the year they started their true freshman Wegman in at quarterback, and their offense seemed to pick up a little bit
Yes.
once he came in. They've already announced he's going to be the guy moving forward this year, so maybe they get a little bit more. I've seen some other people putting them as potential
Yes.
West winners. That would be quite a jump. I mean, yeah, they potentially have the talent on that team, but that's going to be quite a swing to move up to the top.
There are a couple things. I think if this starts slow, they have a game at Miami, and they start losing, I think we get a lot of what we saw last year. And the other thing on Petrino, when he started that last sort of bump at Louisville, and then when he went to Missouri State or Southwest Missouri, I don't remember which one he was coaching before he got that A&M job. He got really sort of very, very pass happy.
Yeah.
Like he was always pass happy, but I mean that balance was, it was in the Hal Mummy, post Kentucky territory where he was trying to throw 70 times a game. If he comes down there and does that where he's just trying to show off that he can create plays of 6 yards for open receivers, I'm interested to see how well this goes.
We'll know by mid-October. They've got quite a stretch where they play Auburn, Arkansas, Alabama, and Tennessee all in a row. I definitely see a loss in one of those four,
for sure.
at least. But yeah, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up for A&M.
I assume they can win 8 games this year, but I am curious if it starts to go bad. How bad does it go, and do we start to get bailing? From the players and quitting, which I know we got last year. For sure, we go to Ole Miss. Would be my.
I think we got it to where I think Kiffin's going to keep this team right around that 8-9 wins, and just kind of keep churning that in and out, which for Ole Miss is probably good enough.
Well, they tended to fire the only other one who did that before, so I think that's what you get. You get here. You'll get some nice offense.
Get a big win upset every now and then, but then you'll drop
get
one.
A win. You might get a loss in a game you shouldn't, and it will probably come, 7, 8, 9 wins, depending on, where it goes. I don't see much more than that. They probably, I don't see them dropping like below bowl eligibility. I don't think.
I think if that were to happen, it would be the hook.
But it'll be interesting. There was definitely drop off last year from the team the year before. The offense didn't look quite as smooth there. So I think that's where you look. If maybe the offense gets back to sort of where it was capable of scoring, 40, 50 points. Because, granted their defense has improved, but it improved basically from not giving up a point every possession to, getting an occasional stop and a turnover here. So I just a sort of team.
I'm still befuddled that they've got that road game at Tulane in week 2. I'm not sure how that happened. I think that could get their season off to a rough start because that's a strong Tulane team.
Yeah, and on the road, too.
Yeah.
Tulane is not where you want to go. Weird. I feel like that was possibly scheduled before they realized Tulane was any good. We go probably to just the same as Ole Miss. I put them sort of in the same category. A little disappointing last year, I thought. but they had some injuries too.
Yeah.
But once again, it's a good team that'll probably win the games it's supposed to and not win the games they want. They have a weird one with BYU too that I thought seems kind of tough to be scheduling, even if it is at home. But what do you make of Arkansas?
Well, KJ Jefferson got hurt last year. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, if not the country. I'd say, top 20. And he's exciting, and he can find ways for them to win games they're not supposed to win. So I think a lot of their success this year hinges on if he can stay healthy and stay in these games. Unfortunately, his play style tends to lean to where he hangs onto the ball. He hangs onto the ball too long, takes some hits that he probably shouldn't. Maybe he's grown a little bit on that because he's definitely experienced at this point. I think this is year 4 or 5. I kind of put them right in the boat with Ole Miss. I think they could finish as high as 3rd or 4th in the West, or as low as 5th or 6th in the West.
I thought the defensive drop off last year really was a problem because even when Jefferson came out, I thought their offense still played decently, and they just gave up too many points in some of those games. So if their defense can sort of bounce back, I think they sort of probably jump Ole Miss, and if it can't bounce back, we get in and around the same sort of team we got the year before.
Yeah, and they are at Ole Miss, they're at Bama, A&M neutral site, at LSU, at Florida. That's a lot of tough.
And the BYU game thrown in there.
Tough games there, and normally you want your non-conference, especially when you're SEC, you want some easier non-conference games. So
they end on a nice little run there: Auburn, FIU, Mizzou.
Yeah. So that all kind of comes to what you think of Auburn.
Well, I guess we'll get to that because guess who's next? Auburn. We could probably guess what I think of Auburn. One, they hired Hugh Freeze. I think we can say I've never been a Hugh Freeze fan, nor have I understood it. I slide him in probably the Pitino category, except I'd probably slide him under Pitino because I think Bobby at least had accomplished more because I don't totally understand what Hugh Freeze accomplished at Ole Miss. He won 9 games, 1 time, 2 times, got murdered in the bowl game by TCU, was not, I'd call, the success he should have been at Liberty. Those teams underachieved. Basically, Hugh Freeze's life is a lot of talk and underachievement to me. But he goes to the school that basically talks a big game and underachieves its whole life, too, in Auburn. So maybe a perfect
I guess
fit.
It's a little step up from when he was at Ole Miss, program-wise.
Yeah, I probably depends on sustained success. Auburn probably had more, but, Auburn tends to have big years and then have years like they had last year where they were just a terrible football team.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what he does with the quarterback play. They had Ashford there, came in from Oregon the year prior. They've got Thorne coming in from Michigan State, so he's got a couple weapons he can play with. His name, he's going to get some talent in there alone, just from how he's been able to get guys to the NFL, but is he going to be able to piece it all together and get more than 6 or 7 wins here at this Auburn team? I doubt year 1 for sure. But, SEC's really tough.
I'm curious how patient Auburn is with him as well.
Yeah.
They haven't been patient with anybody. So if this goes bad, now granted, their schedule starts off rather nicely. UMass, at Cal's a tough road trip, but shouldn't be a problem. If they're struggling in that game.
Yeah.
We probably know where they lie than Samford. Then their schedule turns really, really quick.
A&M, Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss. They've got New Mexico State and Vandy in there as well. But that's only 5 wins we've named so far.
Correct.
The rest of the games on their schedule could go either way.
It's 50-50.
If some of them probably less than 50-50, I think.
We talked about Ole Miss, what you think. We'll get to them, and there's no telling what you're getting from Mississippi State.
I definitely think Auburn's a tier below where Arkansas, Ole Miss, A&M is going to be.
Yes.
I don't think they make that jump above those teams.
You got it. It's pretty obvious, but the tiers, Alabama, LSU, line, sort of A&M, Ole Miss, Arkansas, line, and then I think you could probably throw these jumbled all together because we're getting to it, but Mississippi State, I think if Mike Leach doesn't pass away,
Yeah.
you probably move Mississippi State up into that tier.
I'd bath him up there with Ole Miss and Arkansas.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But Mike Leach is no longer there. They brought in the defensive coordinator who was there, so I sort of easy transition, minus, probably one of the best college football coaches in football.
Well, not to mention, the impact he brought to the game
Yes,
with his offensive
changing
mind.
of offense, changing Mississippi State's offense. Now granted their defense had been really good there, but with Zach Arnett, but I have no clue how to sort of handicap this kind of situation, because usually your active coach doesn't pass away.
They've got Rodgers coming back at quarterback.
Yes.
So you think with a lot of the coaches still in place, they might be able to keep a lot of what they've been doing rolling.
At least for a year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be.
I think that was their hope with the hire.
Yeah,
that they could at least sort of keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, but is it sustainable? I think it could be one of those situations where they hang on and they get 8 this year.
Yeah. You can buy yourself
and
a
then
year,
they
and then
flirt
it
with
starts
7
to-
or 6, and then do they drop out of bowl eligibility, and then they're looking for a coach.
That's
especially when they lose Rodgers at quarterback
Yeah.
and they bring somebody new in. It's just going to be interesting to see if they can maintain.
I'm curious
where they've
if they
been.
can sort of maintain the same offensive system too. I mean, if you looked at what Washington State has become since Mike Leach left, what Texas Tech has become
Yeah.
since Mike Leach left, they've all tried to run, Mike Leach's offense,
And it just falls
None
off.
of them can run it like
Yeah.
that. I mean, Texas Tech went through 3 different coaches, trying to do it, and they couldn't do it. So it's just hard situation to sort of handicap, because I don't think that comes along very much. Let's move to the east side of things. We'll start off with the national champion,
Back-to-back national champions.
Georgia Bulldogs. Talent has left here. New quarterback for sure. A little bit of, a handful of those guys along the D-line gone. I'm not here for a three-peat. I do think they'll be really good. I will say their schedule's pretty easy as well. That sort of works in their favor. I think they drop a couple games this year.
Yeah, I think there's going to be one, at least one, and I think it's going to be from somebody unexpected.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a team that they should beat, and something weird's going to happen. They're bringing in a new quarterback for the first time in 3 years.
They play South Carolina early. They've had struggled with South Carolina over the years.
And their defense is so dominant. Their quarterback play has been, hasn't been outstanding, but it's won them games and taking care of the ball really well.
Yeah.
They're bringing in a guy that was a true freshman last year, and Beck. He's got a little bit of playing time last year in some of the blowouts, but I don't think he's going to be able to play as smart. Yeah, I think there's going to be mistakes, and somebody's going to capitalize on those mistakes. I just don't think they go through unblemished.
I'm curious if the defense can be as dominant. You saw it sort of.
The one thing they do have in their favor, they probably have the easiest schedule in the
That's
SEC
the only
this
thing
year.
I can say. They got a pretty easy schedule. Now, that being said, like I said, they play South Carolina early. They've had trouble with them. They're at Auburn, rivalry game, the Florida game, as the neutral site. They're at Tennessee towards the end of the year. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll sort of know more about both those teams.
That could be, the East deciding
That's
game.
correct. Now, the rest, I don't think they'd have a problem with. They didn't schedule a non-conference, worthy. Some of that is like UAB, who actually would have been a worthy team a couple of years ago, is in transition. So, some of that is not their fault. All right, let's go to the second place team out of the East last year, the Tennessee Vols, with an 11-2 year. Heupel's third year here. Speaking of quarterback changes, I think that's sort of the big thing. We go from
A Heisman candidate.
a Heisman candidate who's smart with the ball to sort of the exact opposite. We assume Milton probably will at least start the year. Sort of the opposite of Hooker. Looks like $1 million. Hasn't always translated. He's also about 10 years in college.
Yeah,
as well.
he's been here. He's been in college for a while. What we've seen from him in the past, he looked good in the bowl game, some of the games last year where he took care of business. But can he make the accurate throws, the right decisions, read what the defense is giving him, and take? Because that's what Hooker was so good at. He didn't force anything. He saw what the defense was giving him on any given play and took it. And the big plays came, but he was patient. Can Milton stay patient? He's got an offensive line changeover that's going to be difficult. And just, if he gets the pressure, can he make the right decisions?
Yeah.
And make the throw accurately and not, 20 miles into the stands,
Hooker was sort of similar to what Josh Heupel was as a quarterback.
Yeah.
Just smart, went to the right place with the ball every time. Milton is like the exact reverse, can launch the ball basically wherever he wants. It's just, is it going to where he wants?
Yeah.
And can he make the right decisions and get this offense in rhythm? Hooker always kept that offense in rhythm, and that's what this offense depends on. Rhythm. Defensively, it's also the other question mark. You saw it in the South Carolina game, one of the ones they lost that sort of cost them at least a chance at that playoff. You have that one game where your offense isn't exactly flowing. Your defense couldn't get stops. So is the defense going to be improved, or is this is just what you're going to get with a Josh Heupel?
I think it's hard to get you're not going to get like a Georgia defense because – one, you're going to be on the field a lot because this Heupel offense, they either score quick or they're done quick and it goes the other way. And so really defensively, you got to come out with the play style. You got to play aggressive. You got to play loose. And if you give up a big play for a score, your offense goes back out there. You outscore them. But what you try to do is force the mistakes, the sacks, the turnovers, the interceptions. You've got to play aggressive and try to force the errors and to get that swing. Otherwise, just take your lumps, give up the points, try again next time because they're going to be on the field, 80% of the game.
Yeah. I will say also this schedule flips for them. A lot of their tough games are on the road this year, where last year a lot of their tough games were at home. We're going to go South Carolina now. 8 wins for South Carolina. I'm not sure any of those were pretty. I guess the Tennessee one was semi-pretty. But I will say this. I really like Shane Beamer. I think he maximizes what he gets. I don't think this team is overly talented, but he sort of keeps them in games, and then they find ways to win.
Can he be the guy to do what Spurrier did there and get him 8, 9, an occasional 10 every now and then?
I think that would be difficult just because I think skill position-wise, I don't think they have what, those Spurrier teams did in the skill positions.
Yeah.
Running back, receivers, tight ends. A lot of those guys went on and played in the NFL. They have solid guys and quarterback.
Oh, they got your favorite guy at quarterback this year.
I would say he's similar to Connor Shaw. So, sort of crazy out there man who can make great plays, but also has his faults. I think it's similar. I just don't think they have the playmakers. I don't think they have the playmakers on defense either.
Yeah.
You saw it last year. There were numerous games where they just couldn't get stops, and they got into these shootouts. But I think they can sort of be similar, and if a couple things break right, because like I said, they're usually in close games.
Well, it's gonna the separating for them is gonna be how they perform against Missouri, Kentucky, these other middle of the road teams. I don't see them getting to the level where they can win the East.
Yeah.
Especially with Tennessee improving.
Well, we're going to get to my futures. I might have a long shot bet on that. But that's because it's a very, very large long shot, and I think everybody else in the East is kind of crappy once you get past Georgia and Tennessee. So if something goes bad there, especially with two teams putting in new quarterbacks, I give that. We'll deal with that more on the futures pod, but we'll go to Kentucky. I think this sort of falls into the Old Miss, Arkansas category.
Yeah.
You sort of know what they are. They are what they are. Probably win games they should and probably won't win games versus top-tier teams.
Yeah,
7-6 last year.
Yeah, they're the team that they can, they can compete with Georgia and then go lose to Missouri.
Yeah.
So, they get on a run. They start off, they got 4 pretty winnable games before they play Florida and Georgia. I think the big success, determining game for them is going to be those matchups, like I said, against Florida, South Carolina. That's going to determine where they finish 3rd in the East or 5th or 6th in the East.
A tough little close, too, at Miss State, at South Carolina, at Louisville, Bama, and Tennessee sandwiched in there.
And, they're also bringing in a new quarterback. Now, this quarterback, I think he's a 6-year graduate from transfer from NC State in Leary. And he's used to throwing the ball.
Yeah.
He might not
Honestly, he might be better than the one before.
Yeah, so we'll see. I was never a big Levis fan. Unfortunately, he's on my
you
NFL
have your
team. Yeah,
jersey now. So.
No, I hope not. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see if Stoops can keep rolling what he's got rolling in Kentucky now. I think he's, outside of Saban, the longest tenured coach in the SEC.
Well, it helps when you can win 7 games and everybody's sort of happy with it because that's about the only SEC school that falls in the category for. All right, let's move to Florida. This one's a bit of a weird one. We'll probably talk about it a little bit in our NFL previews. I really wanted Anthony Richardson to come back for that year. Now, I don't fault anyone who's going to be a first-round pick. You better grab that money while you can, especially with his
I think he needed a little bit more development, though.
This Florida team would have been a beast with him, I think.
Yeah, he fit well into what Napier wanted to do offensively and just kind of, just shots every now and then, but more ball control, power, smash mouth offense. And with a big guy like Richardson at quarterback there, that helps.
So that's probably your biggest question. Can they replace that at quarterback?
I think they're starting Mertz.
Back. I think we'll see a couple quarterbacks here under Billy. He tended to, at Lafayette, be one of those who sort of switch around till he found what he wanted.
You know which they're going to get defensively with Florida and Napier. You're going to keep most teams under, the good teams under 30. Yeah. You're going to keep the bad teams under 20. You're just going to get points on the board, and I don't know if they're going to be able to. Yeah,
and skill positions here would be the other one. They just they haven't had it for.
And he's. Well, and it's funny.
10 years.
They've gone through a few coaches here the last decade at Florida, but Napier's actually really struggling recruiting-wise to get the big-time guys in, and it'll be interesting to see how long he can keep it rolling without getting the top recruits.
I'm curious because that's never sort of been Napier's style, though, too. So, he wants his 2 lines, offense, defensive line. I mean, if you look at like those old Lafayette, they didn't have a ton of skill position guys. They had a good running back, sort of a mobile quarterback, and that's how they won football games. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how he molds them and where they go. But I think it's just sort of hard to judge right now, that Florida team. I don't think it'll be near the contenders, but I don't. Like someone like Kentucky, I sort of cross off. I don't ever sort of cross off a team like Florida because they sit in such a fertile
and they've got a good
ground.
home field advantage.
Yeah. So let's move to Missouri. They will probably win some games for some bad teams.
I don't know. This is a pretty bad Missouri team.
I should say. I probably won't have my picks out by Thursday. I do have my eye on the said South Dakota game. I was very curious what that line would be. It hasn't dropped yet, but South Dakota has a little life to it in football, so it wouldn't totally stun me if we had an opener on Thursday where they lost. This is sort of a nothing team. I guess they were okay last year. They did manage to get their 6 wins, but I did not come away impressed with them at all. I'm not a huge Derkowitz guy, but what do you make of Mizzou here?
Yeah, I'm Drinkwitz. I think is a kind of a wacko. When he comes to coaching, it's just all over the place. He's weird with the media. A lot of quotes and weird one-liners and just quirky. and seems to be hanging on to what the talent was left him, but gradually losing that year over year and make a drop to the basement this year.
Yeah, I keep in mind my futures for dropping to the basement. Vanderbilt, well, they already played a week 0.
Yeah.
They did get the win, so 1 down. I would you say they overachieved a little bit last year? I was shocked they got 5 wins. They played hard. They don't have a ton of talent. I think that sort of repeats itself this time.
Yeah, I mean, but when are you going to get really a lot of the talent at Vanderbilt? It's just a tough place to recruit to. But, being borderline of a bowl game, I think, is great.
I think if they continue to play hard like they did, they'll be in and around there.
I tell you, I like this Vanderbilt team better than Missouri.
Yeah, because I watched them. They tried to win football games. Missouri, I sometimes question what they are trying to do, but not a lot there. Vanderbilt, but they do play hard, so it'll be interesting to see. Who's your pick coming out of the SEC?
I think it's going to be Bama.
I'm leaning Bama.
I think, they've kind of done this every other year kind of thing. If they can find their quarterback, and we'll know, like I said, we'll know after that Texas game. If they find their quarterback and settle in, I think they get Tennessee at home. I think they'll get that one. And like you said, I think Georgia slips up. May still see Georgia in the SEC championship game, but I think it's Bama.
I like Bama as well. All right, let's go to the Big Ten here. Let's start off with the champions of the Big Ten last year. The Michigan Wolverines, 13-1, lost in that playoff game to TCU. That was a nice money winner for us both, other than some minor corrections in game. But nonetheless, Michigan returns a lot of its guys. A lot expected here.
One of the best players in the country in Blake Corum. Just a great team in the trenches. And, Harbaugh's got this suspension early, but it managed to come. It managed to come against a bad East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers. So I think they should coast through that pretty well, considering.
I'm not all that worried. I am curious if they are as good as they were last year. They did dominate most teams. Yeah. We'll see if that holds up in the trenches, because you saw TCU sort of light that defense up. They don't play a lot of those teams with that kind of explosive, speed, but they do have an at Penn State. They are at Michigan State. Not what I'd call overly powerhouse teams, but tough places to go and win football games. And then you got, of course, the last game of the year, Ohio State, but non-conference wise, they shouldn't have too much of a trouble.
They ran the table last year, but I think last year they, going into the year, they were still, little brother to Ohio State. They had beat them the year before, but they hadn't quite taken the mantle as favorites to win the Big Ten. This year they're coming in. I think everybody's picking Michigan to win this thing, with Ohio State losing some talent and Michigan bringing most of their guys back.
And I don't find the Big Ten to be all that deep.
No, it's. I think there's 3 teams, maybe 4 that can win the conference, but that's if there's some slip-ups. But honestly, it could come down to a 2-team competition.
Yeah, you also know how I feel about said third team.
So, I mean, it really comes down to Michigan, Ohio State, and can they handle the pressure of being the hunted?
Yeah.
That, has been Ohio State's for the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, definitely so. I think they'll cruise through most of it, but I am curious, a couple of the road games, they have tended to slip up a little bit too as well. And, skill position-wise, sometimes it sort of comes and goes.
Yeah. Speaking of skill positions.
Well, skill position-wise, they're fine here. Whether their coach, can competently have them focused, that's another question here. Little bit of a down year for Ohio State as they went 11-2, but I'm interested with this team, skill position wise.
Yeah, good. Marvin Harrison Jr., best wide receiver in the country.
His father was as well. So
in their second guy, I can't. remember how to pronounce his name, but I think they're like two of the top 4 receivers in the whole country on the same team. But they do bring in a new quarterback.
Yeah.
So
that's why I was new quarterback. Now, granted, it's been pretty plug and play, but the offense, isn't the question here. It's the same question that Ryan Day has had to answer, most of his time there. Do they get stops?
Well, it's like you said, I think it's, Ohio State and Michigan.
Which is why they lost the 2 games they did last year.
Well, Michigan's strengths are the trenches, and that's where Ohio State struggles. So I think it's going to come down to if they can have a quarterback that can get the ball to these explosive playmakers, and then they just continue to outscore teams. I don't know if the talent's going to be in there defensively to win these tough games.
You mentioned it, that at Notre Dame, we just watched them at week 0.
They got a quarterback
They
now.
got a quarterback, and speaking of teams tough in the trenches, that's Notre Dame. They at Wisconsin game, granted Wisconsin was not good, but in the trenches, they are always good.
And they're at Michigan.
Tough. So, I mean, there could be losses here, and, Penn State as well. At Rutgers, I shouldn't be a problem, but they are a tough physical team. So, teams like that, I get a little worried when Ohio State gets popped in the mouth a little bit and doesn't get to, just run track meets against slow Big Ten teams. Speaking of the third team that will at least contend, Penn State went 11-2 last year. I think, once again, we speak to the depth of the Big Ten. There are 3 teams usually, and everybody else is just fodder. They don't play a very tough non-conference schedule. We talked earlier, we're a little bit higher on this Penn State team.
Yeah.
I think they'll be in and around their, normal 9-10 wins, but I don't think they can sort of handle the Ohio States and the Michigans, and they usually at least have a tough game or drop one that they probably shouldn't, that James Franklin does weird things in the closing minutes.
Yeah, I think if they had got this Ohio State game at their place this year, maybe they make that jump over Ohio State, but they're going to Ohio State. And I think that game's going to be the determining factor of who finishes right there at or near the top between these 2 teams. I like this Penn State team. I think they're going to be better offensively. They play pretty good defense, compared to some other Big Ten teams.
Yeah.
So, I think they get 10.
I could see it. I'm interested about that Michigan State game at the end of the year played in Detroit.
Yeah.
It's will be interesting, but nonetheless, Penn State is who they are. Maryland overachieved last year, but I don't know. They always seem due to lose games that they shouldn't, which they did, but they were able to win a couple games that they probably shouldn't. They were terrible in the conference. They played a pretty weak non-conference. That continues this year.
Yep.
So it's possible they repeat those 8 wins.
Yeah.
Maybe. But I always feel like this team is capable of being very, very bad on any given day.
Well, and they've still got, Tua's younger
Yes.
brother, Tagovailoa. So, he'll be...
He's good, but he's not great.
He's not his brother, but he's up and down. He has his moments where he'll throw for a ton.
He basically fits in perfectly at Maryland.
Yeah. We've gone to the next tier. They could be up as high as, 3rd or 4th, or they could be as low.
There are a couple other teams that I think could at least hang with, Michigan, Ohio State. Maryland, I don't think has any chance of sort of beating those teams. They'll beat the lower tier when they're 6, 7, 8 games and sort of probably be happy and move on. We'll move to Michigan State. I think this is a weird one here. Because 2 years ago they won 10 games, I believe, and
signed Mel Tucker to a huge contract.
Signed Mel Tucker to a lifetime deal. I think we both thought they overachieved 2 years ago, but this sort of fits in that mold where I think they underachieved a bit last year. Some things went against them. They had some injuries, but they also were not as good a team. I don't quite know where to rate this team. I don't think it's like 10 wins like 2 years ago, but I think they move into the
I think they
eight
get
win category.
Yeah,
here.
I think 7 or 8's the window. They actually have a semi-tough non-conference. Central Michigan's not a cupcake.
No.
They're not great.
Richmond's a
but
solid subdivision team,
Washington
and Washington's
is a really tough
real team.
Yeah. So they don't have the cupcake non-conference that a lot of these teams we've already talked about.
Basically, any one of the 4 we just talked about.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they're going to have to get their offensive going, and but their defense was there. They just couldn't score very many
Their
points.
offense was so bad last year. Now, quarterback play was some of that, and their quarterback got hurt, so they started rotating in.
And then the
even worse players than the
said quarterback that got hurt is gone,
yes.
so it's a battle between those guys that filled in last year.
They will have to run the ball very well to be successful. We'll move to Rutgers, who got themselves up to 4 wins, slowly creeping up there. I think they could get 2 bowl eligible here this year. I think they have a little bit more talent than they've had the last couple of years on the offensive end. They're going to be tough on the defensive side of the football. I'm interested to see if they can get enough points here to sort of stabilize a defense where it's going to be tough and hard-nosed, and if they can get themselves back into bowl eligibility. I think about 3 years in, Schiano had him bowl eligible the first time around, so I'm curious if he can sort of repeat that.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. We've talked about outside those top 3 teams, the Big Ten can kind of go any direction. It helps that some other teams are down further than what they've been. Purdue's probably going to be awful.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, my look at that is if they can win those first 3, Northwestern, Temple, Virginia Tech. I think those are all winnable games. Then you get the Wagner. You're at 4 wins there, and find 2 in the rest of that Big Ten schedule that you can maybe slip one. That's where my thinking is.
We've talked about how Maryland's up and down.
Yeah,
they could,
but you have to win those first 3.
You could also drop all of your Big Ten games. So.
That's correct. They need those first 3, and that's where we'll go. We'll move to Indiana. 4-8 last year. I think we're sort of on the downside of the Tom Allen era. It got off to a sort of fun, buzzy start, but it seems to be dropping quickly. I thought they were terrible last year. They had a couple good games, but overall, every time I watched them play, I just thought they were a bad football team. I don't look for that to improve this year.
Yeah, week 1 against Ohio State, not a great opener. Way to get the momentum going. I'm interested to see how Taven Jackson does at quarterback. He was a backup here at Tennessee, transferred to Indiana. He's got athletic ability, maybe can make some plays. But I believe they're 38, 40-point dogs against Ohio State in the opener. So, yeah.
I think 4 wins would... I would find it surprising if they hit that 4-win mark again from last year.
Yeah, I see a win. Indiana State should beat Akron.
Yeah.
I don't see hardly anything else. It depends on what Rutgers is.
Yes, that's what it...
3.
3.
Yeah.
That would be my max that I think they could hit. Wisconsin closed the year well, but I think we all sort of... were disappointed with the way they played football. They were basically a bad football team for 4 months of the season.
And they were kind of transitioning into Luke Fickell's offense from what they do traditionally, and it didn't quite gel the way they liked it. Year 1, maybe he gets a little bit settled and established in year 2, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they are. They got a lot of guys coming back, but it was a lot of guys who I didn't think played good football last year.
Yeah.
I assume they will be improved. They are on the side of football that is not very good.
Yeah.
So, and their schedule is pretty soft.
They've got the easier division.
That being said, it was the same last year. They went 7-6. So I don't know. I think they'll be better. I think they climb back into.
I think
8, 9
maybe
wins.
9.
And if a couple balls bounce their way, they get to that 10-win mark and are back in their, spot of being cannon fodder in the Big Ten championship game. Iowa, who I thought was actually played worse football than Wisconsin last year. They had a better record, but I didn't like anything I saw from this team. They won a handful of games early that were about like 10-7, and I did not enjoy watching this football team play football last year. I'm assuming they'll be similar to what they usually are, solid defensively, mediocre on offense. If they can get any sort of offensive play, they'll probably win 8, 9, 10 games. If they can't, they'll win 6, 7, 8 games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that 8 window is probably right about where they're at. Probably right around where Wisconsin is. It'll come down to that game
Kirk
head-to-head.
Ferentz is still there.
Yeah.
Year number 500.
Them going into Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin has the advantage there. We'll see what Purdue is. We'll see what Michigan State is. There's some questions on the schedule. If some teams turn out to be a little tougher than what they were last year, maybe a little bit of a fallback year. But yeah, nothing impressive from Iowa. They are what they are.
I think we'll sort of know too. Utah State, Iowa State, two. I wouldn't say good football teams, but at least have solid football players on the field. And if they're struggling in those, then you know basically what they're going to be. We'll move to Illinois. Burt came in and got them going. 8-5 last year. I'm big on this team.
I like this team as well.
I think this actually is my team coming out west. You'll see it in my futures a little later. He just knows how to win Big Ten football games.
Yeah.
I think that continues, especially putting them in the side of the conference where we already just mentioned the two teams that probably will compete here. Wisconsin and Iowa are, wild cards as well. I think you throw those two teams in and it's just sort of pick who you think has the more talent and the better coaching. I think Illinois has that.
They also don't pull Michigan or Ohio State from the other divisions.
That helps as well.
So should be some easier opportunities at wins. They get Penn State at home. So, yeah, I think this is a team that could go on a run and maybe make the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I think that as well. So we're both on the sort of same feeling here. I think I'm on the reverse here. I think this one's a falling star, and I think PJ Fleck is a falling star. I think Minnesota scrapes around here. 6 wins, 7 wins is what I'm feeling, and I think this could get worse too if it sort of goes bad. They, have a couple difficult games early in Nebraska and North Carolina. I'm just curious here. I just don't like the way this program is going.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think PJ Fleck may be on his way out this year. It's been kind of he's had some up years, he's had some down years. Last year was okay, but
there's a lot of talk and there's not much production ever here.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. All right, let's go to our favorite power, Nebraska. I like the coaching hire.
Yeah,
I will say that. A guy who's won college football games everywhere he's been, and it's been at Temple and Baylor. So if you're winning football games there, you can coach football. Does it turn around here? I mean, it's just hard to judge Nebraska. It's been so bad under Scott Frost, who, I think we both thought
everybody wanted it to work for him there.
Coming to Nebraska, we all thought was a pretty good coach. Didn't work out. Bring in Rule. I don't want to say a dark horse, but I think Nebraska could be a better football team than their 4-8 record last year.
Yeah, I think they can get bowl eligible. I think they jump Minnesota, and get up a little bit further. They've got some winnable games, but starting off with 2 road games at Minnesota, at Colorado. They need to take care of business in both of those if they want to get up to that level. But I think Matt Rule was the biggest no-brainer hire of the year, I thought. Perfect placement, and I think he can. Yeah. It'll only be a year or two before he gets things rolling there.
I think he will. It's theoretical if they can get that win Thursday night at Minnesota. They could start the year off 4-0. I think a little bit like Illinois last year.
Yeah.
Started the year off pretty solid, and it sort of got them rolling. I think the same thing could have happened to Nebraska. Now the opposite could happen too. They lose that Minnesota game, then go into Colorado, lose that. Then we're talking into bad territory for Nebraska. We'll transition to bad. I don't know how it could get much worse. Northwestern, they were atrocious last year.
Yeah.
Granted, I did enjoy betting.
Yeah.
And it got worse in the offseason. Theoretically, they're going to continue playing football. I don't know if they're going to have players. I don't know if they're going to have a coach. They have Braun in there now, but something new could pop any day, and there could be a change amongst others.
There's only one way to go, and that's up.
Yes, but I honestly, I think I'd be a little stunned if they won more than the one game.
Well, I mean, they've got Howard on the schedule. They should be able to win that one.
But that's so
at
deep
Rutgers,
in there.
UTEP, at Duke.
If they're getting blown out early, that it will be bad for Northwestern. I think this is another wild card in here because we were talking a little bit. I don't think either of us know what to expect from this Purdue team. We were both big fans of Brom there, and we liked betting on him because he sort of got the best out of this Purdue football team. Ryan Walters, who was a defensive coordinator at Illinois, takes over. I honestly have no clue what this team's going to be. I don't know if they're transitioning, if we get holdover from the Brom scraps left over. I think it's going to be bad, personally, and it's going to be a complete retool. But
they do get Hudson Card transfer from Texas coming in to play quarterback. We'll see how that goes.
I love when guys transfer who can't win jobs at places where the quarterbacks weren't all that good to begin with.
Yeah, I don't think they repeat what they did last year. I think we're going to have a little drop-off.
I'd probably trust it more if Braum was still there.
I think this is a team that might get bowl eligible, but it wouldn't shock me to see them only get 4 wins.
Well, that's what I
don't see they getting 8.
It's probably how quick the fall goes and then the rebuild back, because basically their coaching hire was like the exact opposite of Braum. So I just don't quite know what's coming around the corner there. You got a winner for the Big Ten?
I think it's going to be Michigan.
You're going Michigan. We'll wait till my futures for the Big Ten. If you made me pick, I'd probably pick Michigan as well, but we'll wait till the futures. All right, let's go to the ACC. Clemson Tigers sort of ended the year on a good note, I guess. Played better. They won football games once they made the quarterback change. I didn't think it looked,
They went undefeated in the conference, but it was probably like one of the worst years for the ACC of all time.
The offense did not look good, and the defense was not as good as it had been.
Yeah.
Does that turn around? I don't know. Do they have a running back, which this team has needed since they haven't had one since ATN basically left, and 3 or 4 previous before that. They haven't been great offensively. The quarterback looked better than the one there previously, but what do you make of Clemson here? Back into contender, or sort of what they've been the last couple years?
I think they'll be, I don't know. I just don't know if the ACC can produce a national contender right now. It'll kind of depend on what Florida State is, but I think Notre Dame's going to be tough this year. I don't know if they can get that one. They got to go to Miami.
They always struggle at Syracuse as well.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think they're going to make a huge jump from what they were last year. I mean, it's the same team pretty much, unless they can just get some rhythm on offense and figure out a way to manufacture points.
I think
more
that's the whole
consistently.
thing. If they can sort of figure out how to get to 25 or 30,
Yeah.
they're probably good. But I mean, the last 2 years,
But
they haven't been able to figure out how to get to 20.
But North Carolina can score points. South Carolina can score points.
Wake, now they might be down, but I assume whoever Clausen is going to score points.
So I think there's definitely some losable games on their schedule. I think 10 wins is probably where they're going to be, which is what they were last year. Almost what they were last year. So I don't think they jump up back into undefeated realm again.
Yeah, offense, I will be dialed in, not early, but that Florida State game, and see where that offense lies. Speaking of Florida State, slow start, great close for Florida State. I think we both sort of got on this bandwagon and started milking money out of this cash machine late in the season when they really started to dominate, and Mike Norvell really got things going, and it looked like that Memphis program, offensively, and Florida State plug and play always on the defensive side of the football. They always have playmakers. Can they make the leap into sort of national championship contenders?
I think it really comes down to that game 1 against LSU. I don't know. I like Jordan Travis as a quarterback, but I'm not impressed with many of these ACC teams, and I do like Florida State. I like them better than Clemson.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see. Like we've got that LSU game early, and then that at Clemson is week 4. So we're going to know pretty early if they're going to be a national championship contender.
Yeah, definitely so. We probably won't be taking Wake this year for Florida State. Here's a team I'm curious about. You'll see it on our futures. Quarterback, I think we both liked at Boston College. Transfers here. Honestly, I think this is a little bit of a dark horse in the ACC.
Yeah.
I think if Phil is healthy, and I think this Pitt Panther team, I don't know about defensively, but I think offensively they'll be able to score points.
We've seen what this Pitt team can do when they've got a good quarterback, and we love this guy that's coming in.
I think we like this guy better than...
Yeah. This could be a bit of a dark horse. We'll see. They've got a pretty favorable schedule, but it's kind of backloaded at the end. Yeah. So they could start off, 6-0 and maybe even 7-0, and then everybody will be talking about them. But then they got Notre Dame and Florida State back-to-back. So, but heck, even if they can make it through the season only losing 2 games, that's a heck of a year for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I'm just defensively is where the questions are. If they can at least hold up, I think they could be a contender. If they're leaking, I think 9-4 is probably their ceiling. But if their defense is steady enough, I think they could be a dark horse in the ACC. North Carolina, I think you sort of know what you're going to get. Is that you never quite know what you're going to get.
They're probably going to score points. They got Drake May back at quarterback.
Assume they will score points. Granted, there will always be the horseshoe where they score like 10 and lose some 15-10 game, but talent here. But it seems like North Carolina is what they are. They're going to lose some stupid games. And that's just the way it is. And they'll probably be 9-5, 8-4. Theoretically, could get to 10-2, but
I don't think they're going to compete for the conference.
No, I think they'll lose too many stupid games where they don't do smart things, or they give up 70 points to Appy State, something like that. Probably in the same sort of territory as North Carolina.
Another team that can win games and lose games.
You never quite know what you're going to get. Second year of Cristobal. Last year, it had talent, but I don't think it had talent in the places that Cristobal likes to have talent. It's much different than North Carolina. Cristobal's always been, offensive, defensive line kind of guy. North Carolina's always been sort of shifty, fast receivers and running backs and quarterbacks. I don't quite know what we're getting here. A lot of guys coming back.
Yeah, it's
so
mostly the same team as last year, so maybe that cohesiveness helps win some of these games
I
if
think
they
the
weren't.
quarterback will be better too.
Yeah, it's Van Dyke again,
Yes.
I think.
He started off really, really slow
Yeah.
last year and sort of found his
But-
rhythm
yeah.
late. That didn't always go in wins because their defense wasn't up to snuff. I think the defense will be better. It's just like Carolina. Predicting this team is, you have no idea. They'll beat They'll beat Texas A&M, lose to TSU is essentially what you're getting. Talent-wise, can probably play with the top teams, but never seems to consistently be able to put together a 12-game stretch of anything.
Yeah, I think a big momentum getter for them could be that game against A&M in week 2. They're going to need to get that one.
Also could then lose to Miami, Ohio, week 1.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me. All right. I think basically we're probably going to have the same review for, I think, the whole of the ACC here.
I like
State,
this team
I'd
a
say
little.
is more stable. They sort of win 8 games every year, but they never sort of make that leap into. Whereas I think Miami, North Carolina, capable of making a leap into competing. I always sort of see NC State 8 wins.
Well, I think one thing that they've got going for them, I think Doran's offense usually finds ways for good quarterbacks to find success, and I like the quarterback they bring in, the transfer from Virginia, and Brennan Armstrong. He comes from an offense that kind of restricted what he was able to do, and NC State, I think, will let him turn it loose a little bit more and really showcase his abilities. And I see this as a team that could put up some points.
Well, I think when you first saw Armstrong when the old BYU coach was there, I think that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You sort of saw it more what Armstrong could do than the year before when they sort of had him shackled a little bit. I'll be interested to see, but I figure you'll do your one bet a year where you bet on NC State and they'll let you down.
Well, I think week 1 I've already got a play on them. So
it's coming, but I sort of see what they are,
Yeah.
Louisville. Actually, when we were doing our futures, I was stunned this win total was what it was, especially with Malik Cunningham out of there. Now, I think Malik was a sort of hot or cold guy, but he was their whole sort of offense. Braum comes in. We already mentioned what we like. Do you think he can sort of grow upon that 8 wins right off the bat?
I don't think so.
I thought it was very aggressive, their win total, when I was looking up their futures.
I think we have a year or two
That's
where
what
they
I figured.
regress. I think we drop back to maybe bowl eligibility at first, but then when he starts getting guys he wants, he finds a quarterback that he wants to build around. Maybe they get going a little bit, but definitely I think we're going to see a drop-off at first.
I thought we were going to see a drop-off too, not to mention Louisville's whole athletic department is just a mess of everything. But I have to go by what Vegas sees. They see talent there. So
it helps that both Virginia and Virginia Tech are down.
Yeah, we're about to make our way into the previous teams. I think could all be contenders. The next handful, I don't know. Duke really played well. I
overachieved. I
thought way overachieved. I'm curious if we get the same sort of thing.
Could have a massive drop off here.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Mike Elko guy, but I mean, I gotta respect it with what he did last year. He did the Cutcliffe thing where he took a team of not as talented players, got them playing. I'd be stunned if they were able to repeat that.
I think they've got a pretty tough schedule this year.
I see 5-6 sort of wins.
I don't even know if they can get the non-con at Connecticut.
Yeah.
They're kind of a scrappy independent team.
Well, they're coming to Tennessee too, so you better watch out. My Huskies.
But I don't know how many conference games. I mean, it really is going to depend on how bad Virginia is.
Yeah, I think so. It's sort of a wait and see there. We go to Wake Forest. It was sort of a reverse here because Louisville, I thought they overrated a little bit, and they were really, really down on Wake. I get it.
They lost their quarterback.
But I'm in a little bit of Wake is a little bit plug and play. I love Sam Hartman. I think he's a really good quarterback and been underrated. But I sort of think Dave Clawson knows how to win football games, and he'll find his way.
Well, I think this team's definitely going to be 4-0 going into that Clemson game, and then they've got Virginia Tech after that, potentially 6-0 or 5-1 halfway through the season, and that sets you up for pretty much repeating what you did last year with only 8 wins. I think they're going to match what they did last year, maybe even improve on it.
The only thing I can think is defensively. They can't get much worse, but they don't get any better defensively, and there's some drop off on the offense. But I'd just be stunned if Wake isn't what Wake's been, where they can just score points pretty easily, especially on any team who doesn't have, elite level defenders, and even teams who have had elite level defenders, they've been able to light up. You've seen it the last couple of years versus, like Florida State and Clemson, they've been able to put points on those teams. Syracuse, I'm interested where you sit here. I like Dino Babers, and he maxed out what this team was capable.
I think this team cost me a few picks last year.
Capable of. Can he do it again? He just can't seem to get talent there, which has probably been the problem with Syracuse for 20 years now. They just can't seem to get enough talent there, but Dino seems to be able to work with it. I'd be stunned, though, if they could get to that 7-win mark again.
I don't think so. I'd be stunned if they get to 6 wins, honestly. I think this team falls down to 3 or 4 wins this year, back where they are more comfortable being in the last couple of decades. So, I think, his success last year will probably keep his job, even if he drops off. Expectations here, Syracuse aren't that high.
I would not understand why you'd fire him. He's shown if he has anything to work with, he can get wins. I don't know what you bring in there. I think Syracuse is just one of those programs that, it was great in the, late 80s, early 90s when they were in the Big East. And I just think it's one of those programs that has died down. You aren't going to be able to get talent there. And I think Dino maximizes talent. So why you get rid of him? It would confuse me if you'd fire him, because
I don't find many more than 2 to 3 wins on their schedule.
It's just what it is. This one I think could be bad, but Boston College always sort of seems to find a way to scrap together a few wins. Last year they did not. I'm curious how long this coach. Boston College is patient, but it's usually about a 4 or 5 year window where they expect. I don't think they expect 10-win teams, but I think they like to be around that 7-8 win mark, and
there's no way
team is just not capable of that. So
I see a lot of what we had last year,
and they don't have the quarterback either.
I think they're going to be lacking quarterback play. They're not going to put points on the board, and just not going to be a great team. They
weren't even that great defensively last year.
And I really, you can only circle maybe 2 or 3 winnable games on their schedule with the team of their talent.
I wouldn't mess around with Holy Cross either. Their quarterback is probably better than the one that's playing at Boston College. I'll say that at least. Speaking of down programs,
I mentioned both of these teams.
Starting
with Virginia Tech.
Hard to judge. Brett Pry didn't have much to work with last year. I don't think it's improved that much. I'm curious if how long he will get. I don't know how patient Virginia.
This is a program that expects to be in a bowl every year or higher.
I think with what Beamer brought, they expect to be 9-10 wins, at least contending for the ACC. Now they haven't been that for a while, but I can't see them being very good at all.
They were pretty terrible last year, and I don't see. I don't know what they've brought in that could make them get that jump.
3 would be about their maximum. Speaking of programs, Brent Key takes over. I will say once he took over, they played better. Any chance they grow upon this? I mean, that last half of the year, they were playing pretty good football, but I don't know. I think there's room to grow in the ACC, but I just don't think this team has much talent, and I think it's sort of 6 wins would be a very good season for them.
Yeah, this just isn't a good Georgia Tech team, and it's weird how their offense has changed into a more traditional offense.
Yeah.
I'm just not
How
used
has that worked out?
I'm not used to watching that at Georgia Tech. I thought they had more success,
Yes.
running that option. And
well, Ken's free. Maybe they'll hire him next.
that would be awesome, actually. I would love that. But, I just, Georgia Tech's happy if they can make a bowl game, but I don't know if they're going to get that.
Yeah, the only thing you can say is once they got rid of the coach and Key took over, they started to play pretty good football. But I'd be stunned if they could get to 6. This one, I have no idea what we're getting out of Virginia here. This could be pretty ugly. Ever since Bronco Mendenhall left, this program basically is in shatters.
Yeah.
Any chance Virginia can even sniff 4 wins?
No, I don't think so. They might be better than Boston College, maybe. But no, this is just a team that's in shambles, and it's going to take a really big time hire and some players to build this thing back.
I mean, if you look at it, between the Bronco Mendenhall hire, in between, this program was just a complete nothing. Bronco brought them back to, at least contendability, but it just seems like it's back. Sort of hovering around the bottom. They'll look forward to basketball season. All right, that wraps up our college football.
That's
preview.
all our previews.
You got an ACC pick for us?
I'm going to go with Florida State.
I'm going to go Florida State as well. So, futures, I might have a little something different. All right, so let's get into the NFL and
2 divisions today.
2 divisions today. Let's go out west. I think the most interesting release was out west with the Arizona Cardinals. They cut Colt McCoy over the weekend.
Yeah.
Brought in Josh Dobbs and have Dobbs and Clayton Tune as their quarterback. I think that sort of signified this team wants Caleb Williams next year, even though they have Kyler Murray, who they're paying a lot of money to, because I can't think of any other reason why you'd cut Colt McCoy, because he's capable of winning games, and bring in Dobbs and have
not
Clayton
to mention
Tune.
Trade a pick for Dobbs as well.
Also, they traded Isaiah Simmons, who, granted, never seemed to fit in Arizona, but I feel like that was more Arizona. I always liked Isaiah Simmons at Clemson. I think he ended up in a bad situation there, but I think this team might be like really bad.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna. What playmakers they have on defense are old.
Yes,
their offense isn't gonna do much of anything.
Well, it's certainly not if Dobbs or Clayton Tune is playing.
We'll see how long it takes Kyler Murray to get back to the field.
If they want him back on the field.
Yeah.
It might be better just to hold him and then not let people see continued poor play from him, and then maybe they can unload him, though I'd be very interested to see who would trade for that. I'm thinking Arizona could possibly be the worst team in the NFL this season.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if we're getting 10 games of, while I think Josh Dobbs was a great college quarterback, I'm not 100% sold he's going to go into the Arizona Cardinals and light up. I think he was brought in there to lose a lot of football games for them. So I just... everything is ick here in Arizona. We'll move to the Rams next here. It's not much better here.
This is a team that another team kind of like the Bucks. They went all in.
Other than
got their Super Bowl.
Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp are on the team.
Yeah.
Everything else I think is bordering on below average. Stafford comes back. I'm curious how long he lasts. He's already got his wife complaining. So
yeah,
I'm curious how long that lasts.
Tough offensive line.
Bad O-line.
Doesn't get the protection.
I don't even know if I mean Kupp's one of the best receivers in the game, but he is coming back off an injury, so I don't even know how healthy he will be to start the year.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald, I still regard him as one of the best defenders in the game, but I think we saw a little bit of a drop there.
Yeah.
Plus, he's each year it seems he's getting less and less help from the outside.
You think there's a chance if, say, they start to slip, he gets injured and ends up on the bench?
I'm more curious with, there's been retirement talk 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
From Donald, from Stafford, from the coach. I'm wondering if this ends up just as bad as Arizona's situation, and then we get a lot of say goodbyes.
But they got their Super Bowl.
They got their Super Bowl. They're paying the price for it. It also seems that, Kroenke seems to throw his money around in different spurts. He threw it at L.A. and Denver and Arsenal were not getting a ton of money. And now Arsenal and Denver are the ones competing for titles. They seem to be getting a little bit more of the money than the Rams are at the moment. I don't think they'll be as bad as the Cardinals because they still do have some remnants of some good players.
Yeah.
But I don't think this team will be good.
Well, and, as a team that's got a lot of pieces they need, do you really want to finish middle of the pack, or do you want to try to secure some better picks?
Do you think this team is even capable of finishing 500? I mean, most NFL teams, if things, go right, can be in and around 500. I just don't know if I can see them at that contender status. I can give you a case for pretty much 95% of the teams.
I think
at least getting to 500.
I think their window is like 6 to 9 at the most.
See, I think it's more in the 4 to 8.
I mean, we'll
range.
see how long Stafford sticks around. I think he's good enough.
I'm wondering how quick he gets injured or just isn't playing well, and they see what the Georgia.
He's about ready to retire as well.
See what the Georgia kid has. I mean, I'm not expecting much there, but throw him out there, see if he hits like a Brock Purdy, and if he doesn't, we draft a quarterback in the upcoming draft. Let's move into I think the other two teams I would call contenders in the whole of the NFC. We'll start out with the Seahawks here. I really, really like this team. I think this is my other team that has a shot at least coming out of the NFC for the Super Bowl. On the offensive side of things, they're loaded up. Lockett, Metcalf.
They picked up Smith and Jigba.
They picked up Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. Brought Noah Fant in.
A lot of weapons for Geno.
Geno Smith played good quarterback last year. Honestly, you probably could easily throw him in the top 1 or 2 in the NFC of quarterbacks. So, I mean, I think the question comes, how much of a progression on defense did they make? They started to come around towards the back end of last year. If this defense grows even more, I think they are a legit contender here in the NFC for sure.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a lock for the playoffs with as weak as the NFC. I don't know if they can win the division against the 49ers, who we'll talk about in a second. But yeah, I think
I know of one way. We'll get to that in a second.
In a minute. But yeah, I think they've shored up their offense even more. But I like you said, I don't know if the offense was the problem last year. We'll see if some of these guys can grow into their roles on the defense and get some continuity there. But yeah, I think at worst they repeat what they did last year.
I think at worst we get what we got last year, and at best they could make an Eagles-like jump. I don't know. They aren't as talented, but I mean wins-wise, especially with the division they're playing in, they could make a leap here. Let's go to the final team. And basically every position here is too deep with elite players, except
for
for one.
The one that matters in the NFL.
I mean, I don't think you can argue anything here. Ayuk, Samuel, Jennings, McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Kittle, basically everything on the defense is of elite variety. Purdy comes back off the elbow surgery and off basically no one knowing.
They dumped Lance.
Let's ask the Purdy question first. I mean, he doesn't have to be good. He basically has to repeat last year and get the ball to the weapons.
Here's my thing. I thought they pulled the trigger on Lance a little bit too early.
Yeah.
Because what if Purdy's season last year was a unicorn? What if he comes out and he's just terrible this year?
Yeah. Well, we should dive it. Basically Trey Lance hasn't played football. For 4-5 years now. He played that 1 year at North Dakota State, I believe, in 2019. Won the championship in the subdivision. Granted, not elite competition, but I mean, North Dakota State is an elite football team who runs a pro-style offense. They probably have just as many players drafted from their system as some of those Cal type schools. So I don't knock that. And then COVID season knocks out his second year of getting playing time in college, comes in to San Francisco. They make a stupid trade to trade up, which puts pressure on him. He breaks his finger in training camp, and Garoppolo takes over that first year. So he basically gets no snaps his rookie year, breaks his ankle in that second year when he was going to take over the job, and is coming back from that, gets thrown into this quarterback competition. He just hasn't played football. There's no way to know what he is. Now, granted, they see him in practice. They probably don't want to mess with the Purdy thing because it went so well. I don't understand the Darnold thing, I think, is probably the elephant in the room.
Well, I also don't understand the urgency in getting rid of Lance, unless you're just trying to show Purdy the support. But my thing is say Purdy comes out and is crap.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to have Lance in your pocket to at least throw back out there and try him again?
Well, that's what what are you getting with Sam Darnold? I know what I'm getting.
Well,
You're getting
we've
interceptions.
seen him at two teams, and we've seen him throw, interceptions.
It speaks, I've talked about it before, I think Shanahan is a good coach, but I think the ego there is I can take any quarterback and make him fit. I think that grows even more because he basically threw Brock Purdy in there, who was, let's say, an average college quarterback.
Yeah.
And threw him into NFL. He became good enough for this San Francisco team. So I just feel like Shanahan thinks he can take whoever, including Sam Darnold, who we watched tank Carolina's season last year, including that final game.
Here's the thing. I think this works with a quarterback that doesn't lose you games.
And I think that's what Purdy could be.
You don't need a quarterback to win you games. Mm-hmm. But Darnold is a guy that most definitely can lose you football games. That's my
concern. Purdy comes in, he either gets hurt, not fully healthy, goes back to what everybody thought he was coming out of college, and then you're going Sam Darnold, and then we're getting bad interceptions, bad fumbles, bad sacks taken, and as good as that defense is and as many weapons as San Francisco has, they begin to hover around the 500 team. It's not concerning as long as Purdy can basically replicate, which is get the ball out to Samuel, Ayuk, Kittle, McCaffrey, and let this defense crush teams into dust.
Hopefully McCaffrey can stay healthy.
Yeah. That being said, the backup running back was fine as well before that. So this team has everything, but I think you still have to question what's under center. And I think if it gets to that Darnold, I drop a lot.
Yeah.
Once Sam Darnold becomes involved into that equation. Maybe it ends up like a Geno Smith thing, but Geno Smith never had interception problems. It was actually the other way around where he was overly cautious and would just check down every time. It worries me a little bit that their quarterback situation is Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold. I thought they quit on Lance early. I think you think the same. All right, let's move to.
First off, your winner.
Oh.
I think I know who it is. You going Seahawks? I think Purdy manages to stay healthy and does enough. I think it's going to be Niners.
Futures-wise, if I'm betting, I'm putting money on Seahawks. If you just asked me to pick, the Niners' talent is...
Yeah. They could run the ball every play.
That's what I mean. Honestly, they played the stupid NFC Championship game without a quarterback, and they were still in it for 3 quarters.
Yeah.
So, as long as that defense is there, I think they can make their way. But
Yeah.
I don't think Seattle's a joke. So
Yeah.
I'm futures-wise, we'll get to that show next week. There's going to be money on Seattle, certainly. You said San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the AFC East. This is actually kind of an interesting division here. I think just overall, the AFC, basically 3 of the 4 are pretty interesting divisions. The AFC South is interesting in its own way. But let's go Patriots here first. I think defensively, this team will be one of the best defensive teams in the leagues. They were last year. They usually are under Bill. We flip to the offensive side of things. Granted, a bad defensive coordinator will not be running the offense.
Yeah.
That's a plus. But I'm still not...
I don't think they picked up enough weapons.
I'm not 100% sold. Bill O'Brien is a giant upgrade over what was had last year.
Yeah.
Their guards are already hurt along the offensive line. Their offensive line was pretty poor last year. I think that hurts Mac Jones. I'm still not sold on their weapons.
They may make a move.
Granted, Parker Smith-Schuster is good. Parker's never healthy. Smith-Schuster is a solid receiver, but I don't think anyone would be. That's a number 1 who could carry you. And Kendrick Bourne is a deep threat. It's not somebody you can count on. I just don't think these weapons are here. They pick up Zeke. This team's going to be what it is. I am assuming a ground and pound team who tries to speed up the game, run the ball, and let their defense go to work here.
Yeah, I just think they would have benefited greatly from getting a big-time wide receiver, a free agent, or trading for somebody. And that move still could happen.
Yeah.
Maybe they scalp someone from a team that falls apart early. But, yeah, I think Mac Jones desperately needs another weapon.
If Hopkins was the one rumored who ended up going to Tennessee,
Yeah.
I think we'll get to that when we get to the South.
I think that could have helped this
Do
Patriots
you think
team.
it would have helped? I'm hot and cold on it because you don't always know what you're getting from Hopkins, health-wise more than production-wise, especially over the last couple of years. Granted, I think that will help. What do you think the ceiling is for this team? I think that's probably what we have to go here for a lot of these AFC
Well,
teams.
it's so tough because the rest of their division is up and coming and could be better. I don't see how they make a jump and win the division. And I think they're borderline, we've talked about how strong the AFC is. It's going to be tough to even get a wild card.
Well, I don't know if I can put this. There's a chance, especially if the Jets fall apart. We'll get to them next. But I just don't know if there's enough offensively that they can stay in games, with some of these teams who've been able to score points on them like the Bills. Let's go to, the said Jets here. This is an interesting one. It's everybody's preseason darling. Aaron Rodgers goes there. The Green Bay Castoffs go there. They pick up Hardman. I don't know. Are we counting that as a pickup? He make 3 or 4 explosive plays on the year. Wilson, probably a second year out of Garrett Wilson. Defensively, I think really is where this team sets the tone, especially, out on the corners. Yeah. They can go there, and then they just have, havoc wreckers along the defensive line. I think they're a little weak along the linebacker territory, but I think the real question is, can Aaron Rodgers hold up with this offensive line that possibly is the worst in the NFL?
Well, I just think, I know Aaron was unhappy at Green Bay, and I think that's why he underperformed last year. I don't think he was in it. But offensively, outside of Wilson, what is different on this team than what he had at Green Bay? And honestly, this line is worse.
Yeah, much worse.
So, got Breece Hall at running back, got a strong defense, but it's still going to be him scrambling and running around trying to create on offense, I think. And, maybe won't mind it as much here, but I just don't know if it's going to translate. And I don't know if we're going to have this big boom that a lot of people are expecting with the Jets.
Yeah, I'm sort of torn here. Like, I think actually the Patriots could be better than this Jets team. Along that line, I don't think they're very good. I know everybody's hyping up Breece Hall, but I'm not sold he's going to be back. He blew out his ACL like 6 months ago. It wasn't like a blowout in the preseason. It was like the back end of the season. I think they sort of told you that when they went and picked up Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
I don't think they add Dalvin Cook if they're watching the practice field and see Breece Hall making explosive runs. And along this, they're going to have to be able to run the ball and sort of not get in third and long situations, because if they get behind the chains, there's no way they're holding up along the line. Rodgers gets hit. How long he stays healthy, I think some of the problem last year, too, was he got hit, he hurt his hand, he wasn't able to make throws. And I don't see how this is much different than that Packers team last year, which had a pretty solid defense, decent running backs, offensive line, and, a explosive receiver on the outside and some okay receivers in between. It seems very Green Bay light, and it's Green Bay light going into a tougher freaking conference. So I'm not 100% sold this team's going to be great. Now, one that might have the chance here is the Miami Dolphins, if the quarterback can stay healthy.
Yeah.
I
don't think he ever recovered from the 3 or 4 concussions he got at the beginning of last year.
Possibly 5 or 6 that were not concussions, though he was asleep on the field. Offensively, this team's going to score a whole lot of points. Defensively, probably is a little bit where the questions come in. They'll get a full year out of Bradley Chubb here. He wasn't great last year, but I think some of that, he wasn't totally healthy.
Yeah.
And mid-season trade, I think, is a lot of weirdness. Christian Watkins will be there. I think the outside is where you have a couple questions. Howard wasn't that great last year, though he has been an elite corner before. You bring in Eli Apple. I think everybody knows Eli Apple has not been that great throughout his whole career. Can the defense hold up? Line create enough havoc? And can Tua hold up? I think are the questions here with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I think if Tua can hold up, it takes a lot of pressure off the defense because they're going to score points with Tua in there. He's going to get the ball to these 2 awesome playmakers he's got in Waddle and Hill, and they're going to be putting up 30 points a game if he's playing their quarterback, which gives a lot of relief to the defense. But if he goes out, I think it just puts too much pressure on this defense and they'll collapse. But
every game he played that he was healthy, the Dolphins,
I think upside football compared to the last 2 teams we talked about.
Yeah.
Upside, this team has higher upside. Yeah. But I also think they could swing. They're the most volatile. Yeah. I think they could swing to the bottom of the division as well. Yeah. So really just depends on some health and if they can keep making those plays that they did last year.
I think those plays are coming when you have Hill and Waddle out there.
Yeah, I mean you can't double both of them.
Yeah. I think you'll make plays. Tua health, very, very important. And if they can get those explosive plays, then the defense can start to pin their ears back, force turnovers.
Yeah.
That's when they become good. You could talk me into them being fringe Super Bowl contenders if everything breaks right there. All right, let's go to one of the probably legit Super Bowl contenders here. Offensively, I don't think you have much to worry about. Josh Allen dropped off a little bit towards the end, but I think that was it. There was a very definitive line from that Jets game when he got hit and something went wrong with elbow or shoulder to what was going on in the first half of the season. They bring in Damian Harris from the Patriots. I thought that was a pretty good add. Running back depth. Maybe you can hate a little bit on the receiver, but I still like Gabriel Davis. I thought he was a pretty good number 2. Diggs, nothing to worry about. Line is a little soft, but they sort of hide that because Josh Allen can do whatever he wants. I think the questions come, what can this defense do? Because you saw it in the playoff game when the Bengals just shredded them.
I'm confused by their draft. I thought they had the potential to shore up a weakness, and they brought in another tight end, even though they've got Dawson Knox. So I thought that was a little weird.
We're getting camp raves, though. You know how you love those.
I just don't. I don't think another weapon on this offense is what you needed. I think you needed protection for Allen or something to shore up the defense a little bit.
Well, I think if you were going to go another weapon too, you'd go like an upgrade on that number 2 receiver slot.
Yeah, and so we'll see here. I think this is a team that I believe their window's starting to close.
Yeah,
I think there's grumblings. Like I think I've seen some stuff on Diggs might be wanting out. We'll see. But is it this year or bust?
It's
starting to feel that way.
Now, I think you sort of play things in sections. I think they'll always sort of be, as long as Josh Allen's healthy.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where they're capable of winning 9-10 games, getting in the playoffs. Will they be Super Bowl contenders? I think, if this year's team doesn't do it, you probably have to start to rebuild, remold, and maybe Diggs goes, maybe Davis goes, you clear out the cap. I think you've already seen it. They let a couple of the defensive guys go, the linebackers.
Yeah.
So they might start that rebuild next year if this team doesn't make that run. I think you always stay contender as long as Josh Allen's your quarterback. I think, he can win 9-10 games pretty much no matter what. Now, Super Bowl contenders, I think this is probably the last year for that. And then we see if there's a rebuild. But defensively would be my questions. You don't quite know when Von Miller's coming back. Now, I don't think that matters early. He did go on the PUP list, but I think that's more of...
He did make a lot of plays for them last year.
Yeah, I think their goal is to have him healthy and ready by the playoffs. Poyer and Hyde come back too. I think people sort of forget both those guys got hurt last year, and they didn't have them in the playoffs. Those two are two of the best safeties in the league. They covered a lot of those problems. And once you lost Miller, they didn't quite have the pass rush. So we'll see if the defense bounces back a little bit, but that would be my main question with them. Is the defense going to get a pass rush, and how healthy are Hyde and Poyer too? If they can make a full recovery on that, but definitely a contender nonetheless. So AFC East, you got a surprise coming out of there.
I'm gonna roll with Miami.
You're gonna roll with Miami?
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with Buffalo. I think that's a 12-win guarantee, sort of. So Buffalo for me. All right, that wraps up the Wager Zone.
Yeah.
Be sure to catch all our shows. We're going to have our picks, college football picks the first weekend for that. We're going to have our college football show on the Wager Zone. That will also be on there. You'll want to catch that. Be sure to like and subscribe. Catch all our shows on YouTube, on GLN TV. That's our show, and we're out.
This is Stapleton Airport information. Mike, wind at 320 degrees at 6, temperature.
Just where I'm gonna land. Only the word is crash.